Cool.
This looks bad.
This looks great.
Considering it's not listed on the outside of the room. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody do this. My friend Pam has been very nervous. Everybody just send her some sparkle fingers right now so she knows that she's with friends.
I'm not nervous.
Well, you can't be now because they sent you sparkle fingers.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
She was just reiterating the fact.
I just like
Did you
things
wanna-
organized.
Did you want to swipe the screen?
That's gotta be, I'm
I'm-
assuming it's from playtesting.
I'm not too keen. I'm not writing down what we're
That
No,
is
no, no,
fair.
okay.
There we go.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Pam. Pam Walls. I'm a board game designer. I'm also the co-host of Board Game Broadscast. So this panel will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. I think we have 64 subscribers, so, you know,
Woo, pretty much
if all of
breaking
you
the internet.
subscribe right now, we'll have 76 by the end of the day, which is pretty cool.
I'm already subscribed.
Oh, thank you.
It's me too.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, welcome. So this is the Tabletop Dos and Don'ts panel. I'm joined by my co-host, Kathleen Mercury,
Hello, everyone.
as well as Hayes-Bouyouris, Shannon McDowell, and Helaina Cappel. Awesome designers, publishers. We're going to be talking about lessons learned about pitching, prototyping, playtesting, design. So feel free to ask questions throughout. If something comes up, just raise your hand and we can address it. So we're just going to go down the line, just introduce ourselves, our role in the industry, and there you go.
Such.
And such.
Are you not going first?
Oh, I thought I kind of did.
Is your microphone
So-
on?
Hello?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm a board game designer. I mainly do party games. My game Hold That Face was published by Hasbro in 2017. I have another party game coming out next year with Outset Media. I'm also working on a strategy game co-designed with Jonathan Gilmore. And I have another game with another publisher. There's a few other projects going on. I also organize ProtoTO, which is a playtesting convention in Toronto. It's an annual event the last weekend of September every year. So if you have a game you want to playtest and get feedback, I highly recommend that. It's prototo.ca. Yeah, that's good for me.
Cool.
You should go.
Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to go. So my name is Kathleen Mercury. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. I teach game design. I've been doing that for about 14 years to middle school gifted kids. And I started designing games because if I'm gonna have them do it, I'm gonna do it too. And then as I was designing all my resources, I shared them with people all over the world on my website, KathleenMercury.com. And so I present all the time about teaching game design, a variety of podcasts, Board Game Broads, on-board games, games in schools and libraries, other podcasts that I do. I just found out this week that I'm going to be on GAMA's Education Advisory Committee, so I'm super excited about that, about helping get more games into schools and in the community and helping retailers do that. So super excited and glad everybody came.
If you're into the education side, we have an education panel tomorrow too.
Also that, oh, and I've got some games too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just got games. I'm Hayes-Bouyouris. I am a game designer. So my games that are out are things like Bosk just came out, Kodama 3D is coming out shortly. I've got Roar, the Ghostbusters card game, Scott Pilgrim's Minis just got announced, and most of the stuff coming after that is a whole bunch of IP and comic stuff that I can't talk about yet, but fun stuff coming. I'm also one of the co-hosts of the Meeple Syrup Show, which is a show all about the game design and the game industry. So if you want to get a good overview and like what all of this really is, we do a live show every Wednesday, but we're also a podcast now too. And so we not only talk to designers, we talk to like all kinds of different people throughout the industry. So you kind of get a sense of what do they do in the industry? Is this something you'd want to do, or how do you work with them? That kind of thing.
Okay. I'm Shannon McDowell. I'm a board game and puzzle designer. So I design a bunch of different types of board games and then also escape room games, and for puzzle hunts, that kind of thing. I also work at Wilfrid Laurier University in Brantford, Ontario in their game design and development program. So I research cultural bias in escape rooms and help with the student projects and that kind of thing.
I'm Helaina Cappel. I have been a teacher for 18 years and I have designed a couple of games. Most recently though, I have two publishing companies. One is KTBG, the other one is Burnt Island Games, and we're working on our 8th game right now, which is very exciting. We've been around for about 5 years, and very excited for what's to come.
Yeah, it's really cool to have Helaina on this panel because she designs games, but she also publishes games. She has a lot of perspective on a lot of what we're going to be talking about, so it's really great to have that on the panel. So we're just going to talk about sort of lessons learned, do's and don'ts. There's so much to cover, so we're not going to cover everything. But we thought we might divide it up into sort of sections. So we're going to start with do's and don'ts of the actual design of the game. Generating ideas, coming up with ideas, prototyping that idea, those sorts of things. So when you design your games, what are some tips, some do's and don'ts for that aspect of the process?
Sure. I would say the most important thing when it comes to designing an initial prototype is you want to, out of the productivity triangle of good, fast, and cheap, and you know how you can pick two? Fast and cheap. You want to get it on the table as quickly as possible so you can start iterating on it as fast as possible. I used to let my students spend 3 weeks making their initial prototype, then it would hit the table, it wouldn't work, and they wouldn't want to throw out that work, and you can't blame them, right? It became precious. But if it's something that I give them 3 days to make an initial proof of concept that's incomplete, unfinished, doesn't have art, it's all handmade, they're much more quickly, one, they figure out what the problems are sooner, and two, they can just start moving faster to that next phase, and the game will get better so much faster than them trying to hold on to a bad idea that didn't work. So when people talk about like fail faster, all that stuff, fast and cheap. Don't worry about it because it's not going to be good. So that's okay.
Yes.
Fast and cheap so you can figure out how to make it good.
The first one's never good. It's on its way.
Right.
It's never good.
Right.
And so a big part of that is to continue not just get to the table as fast as you can, but just know you have to be willing to gut your games. Maybe there's something you're hanging on to because it's a really great mechanic or a really great idea you have, but maybe it doesn't fit this game. Maybe you're trying to shoehorn the wrong things together. Or something's not working in playtesting, because playtesting is a really big one that we can get a lot more into. You set a game to the table, this one part of the game works. Maybe you want to throw out everything else and just keep focusing on rebuilding that one part of the game. That takes time to get used to if you're not someone who's comfortable with that, is you need to be able to be pretty ruthless with your own games. Otherwise, you're not going to get it to do what you want it to do.
So one of my tips, and it's maybe a little more specific than those, but keep graphic design, like be aware of your graphic design right from the beginning. And it sounds a little silly, right? Because you want to get it to the table really quickly, and I'm not talking art, like forget about art, that doesn't matter. But where are your icons? Where are your numbers? What are players going to see when they hold the cards in their hand? If you've just you're like, okay, here's the title of the card and the number in the middle. Well, if they're fanning their cards in their hand, they're going to have to go one at a time to see what that number is. That's why numbers are usually in the top corner. Keep that in mind because it makes it easier to see what's working and what doesn't when you're not fighting past the bad graphic design to try and play your game the first time.
I think that's a really good point. Like user experience is a big part of that, and the more you practice this, the more you get into it. You start having an idea in mind of exactly what you want to execute. If you want a player to see that game the same way, you have to start already setting it out to look and feel like that.
One thing I learned is you can try to force some design into a game, and sometimes that doesn't work. And one of the big things that I learned how to do is to shelve the game. Just put it away. Put it away for a long time, a short time. The second game that I co-designed, Haunt the House, took 3 years to get through, and we started with an idea which was great and it didn't work so well, so we tried to do something else with it, and we sort of got to the point where I just said, I can't look at this anymore, let's just put it away and maybe one day it will happen for us. And then, one day we said, let's take it out and see how it goes, and the second we took it out, it was like, it just happened for us, and it was away for a year. We put it away for a year. Obviously, during that time, we were working on other things, but it really is important if something's just not working for you and you try all these different things, just put it away for a little while and maybe one day it will come to you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and just to touch on as well, just to even come up with these ideas. So it's good to take a break, to give yourself some breathing room to come up with new ideas or also better ideas for your current designs. So I'm curious how all of you generate new ideas as well as solutions to your current designs. I know Erica gave the keynote talk at Prototio last year about generating ideas and about working your creativity muscles. It really is a skill you need to develop.
Yeah, you get better at it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the more you do it, the better you get at it. You're not just either born creative or not. And that was a big takeaway from that talk. So I'm curious, and I'm actually gonna start. So the way that I usually come up with the majority of my ideas, it's very inconvenient because it's when I'm trying to go to sleep. So it's usually late at night, I'm lying in bed, and I'm like, I'm so tired, but what if I did this game idea? And then I'm up for the next 2 hours. But that's when I get my ideas. So I'll write them down on my phone. I know I have them locked away, and then I can try to go to sleep. But that's usually the best time. I can almost feel my mind opening up and closing it. If I know I'm working on some games and I don't have the time to dedicate to a new one, I'll usually keep those doors closed. But if I'm like, okay, I'm ready, I can open them up and just lie there in bed and be like, all right, let's go. That's usually my way of generating new ideas. So I'm curious about yours.
Mine has to make me laugh. It has to be something that like I'm excited to like play around with. It has to be something that I'm having fun with. My first game started out with like, wouldn't it be funny if you made a game about birds pooping on people? You know,
It
so
would be funny.
Yeah. Good news is Ragnarok hitting Kickstarter next year. It's dragons now. But it also has to be something that I tend to start games from a research perspective. I was asked last year to make a game about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. All hail the queen. And so I started doing some research, and I came across this thing, and when she was studying law in Sweden, there was this term called Vägmarken about waypaver, and like creating, like basically blazing the trail for others to come behind you. And so that's what the game turned into, where you created pathways so other people could either follow behind you and take the easier route, or they could forge their own pathways, you know, and like kind of take the hits, but also gain more in experience that then you could use later. And so I tend to start from a research perspective. After like the initial, like what the thing, I turn to research and look for ideas, like as I'm reading Wikipedia, like can I make that in the game? Can I make that in the game? Can I make that in the game? And I tend to start from that research thematic sort of perspective first.
I was trying to find the actual, we did an infograph for this, so if you want to look it up, some of the techniques we were talking about at Prototio, Meeple Syrup did an infograph about it, and I was trying to find it really quick, but whatever. I can just talk about some of them. Honestly, for me, my brain doesn't know how to turn off, a bit of an ADD problem, so in some ways, this is one of the few kind of like hobbies where it's actually conducive with how my brain works rather than fighting against it. So if you're somebody where like ideas are just constantly popping in, you can't stop them. In other fields, that's a problem. Here, not a problem. Other than sometimes saying like, okay, I'm already working on enough stuff, like you gotta stop right now, right? Sort of thing. Just make sure you're always writing down ideas. But you can really train yourself, but also I say one of the main things for generating ideas is know yourself. So one of the few things is like, well, as Pam said, like hers comes at night. Well, that probably means she's someone who needs quiet space. She needs no one else around. She needs you know yourself well enough to put yourself in the right environment. Because if you're someone who gets overstimulated, well, don't go sit in a coffee shop trying to generate ideas because you're setting yourself up to fail. So you have to be very conscious of those things. Know yourself. Be honest with yourself. If you're a visual learner, well, guess what? You're probably also a visual creative person. Start collecting sets of pictures that are going to like trigger ideas for you and send them firing. A lot of people like to come up with ideas. A lot of us will do it too. We'll play a game, especially if a game you hate. Because all of a sudden you're like, well, I would have done it this way. And the minute you do that, well, now you have a game, right? Because you want to see your game come out. And that's another really big thing is do a game for yourself. Because you can try to design for other people, which is great down the line, especially if you want to keep, pitching to sell. But until you kind of get used to what that is, get used to like how audience and production sort of works, make a game for yourself. Make it because this is the game you wanted to see. And odds are there's an audience out there for that too, because people probably want to see the same thing too, right? And you won't know until you make it and put it out there. But yeah, figure out what type of learner you are, what type of environment you like. If you can combine those two things, you will actually not have a big problem generating ideas.
Yeah, so Erica covered a lot. I have a lot of repeats actually, because there's 3 different ways that I generate ideas for games. And the first is by theme. So I'm watching a TV show or a movie, or I'm on the internet and see a picture or read an article or someone says something or I just think, wow, wouldn't that be a good game? Or I've never seen a game like that and I want to make it. So that's one way. The second is mechanics, where I think, wow, this is a really cool mechanic. What if there was a game that used that? And usually I do find that by playing other games where I'm like, you know, I played Everdell for the first time on Thursday and I was just like, okay, so this is how I would do it differently so the game actually finishes in a decent amount of time.
It's a great time turner.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm like, I love the concept, but here's what I would do differently. So it's more of a mechanic, and I'm like, okay, well, what would I do with that? And then the third way is puzzles, because I'm a puzzle person. I also tend to design a lot of co-ops, because what's a co-op game but just a really big puzzle that people work on together? And so that is also, I'll have an idea for a puzzle. And it's funny, I've had several games that have either started as co-op with a puzzle and then moved to competitive because it works better, or started as a competitive game and then I was like, no, this needs to be, everyone needs to work on this together to solve the puzzle. So those are my 3 ways of generating ideas, but those are also 3 different ways that I engage with the world, right?
So for me, it's more a matter of working with someone. I've never designed a game on my own, although I do have ideas of my own from time to time that I would like to continue working on. And I am, just like Pam, in the middle of trying to fall asleep at night, I'll have an idea. And my design partner actually happens to be my life partner, so we're often the only time we get to speak to each other in the day is when we're just falling asleep. So a lot of ideas come out at that time, but I enjoy designing games with people. For myself, it's not siloed. I like being able to have somebody say to me, oh, that's a fantastic idea, let's try that, we'll do that right now. Whereas when you're designing a game on your own, you've got your ideas and you're going to wait to play that with someone. And my design partner is right next to me. So for me, that's a really big part of the process, is designing with someone.
It's a phenomenal time saver, by the way, too. And it's also nice if you're someone who's maybe a bit of a procrastinator, or, you know, deadlines sort of are something that shifts a little bit because you're like, tomorrow. You can't do that when you have a co-designer. You have someone else who's sort of keeping you accountable or keeping each other accountable. It is actually a really good resource in itself. Not to say that you can work with everybody. That doesn't happen. But the people you do, you'll know pretty quick because you'll click right away. You can start to bounce ideas really fast, and something that would have taken you months to figure out, you could talk to somebody else and probably do it in like 15 minutes. You'd be amazed what a time saver it is. It is a fantastic resource if you can find the right people.
I'm just curious, in the audience, is anyone co-designing a game right now? Anyone interested in possibly ever co-designing a game? Okay, cool. Because Erica has a lot of experience, in this panel, but particularly Erica co-designed a lot of games, so maybe
I've got
just
3 co-designers right now, I think, or 4. Oh, sure, we got 4. I have this something right here. Well, at least 3 contracted co-designers right now. Like, games are either out or under contract. And I will say, it doesn't work with everybody. There are people I would love to work with, but it's like hitting a wall when you go to sit together and start brainstorming, and you'll know it pretty quick. I mean, sometimes I want to admit you can't work together, but you can't work together. You can be like the best of friends and can't work together, just because honestly, your brain processes don't work the same way. And another big thing is, if you want to co-design with somebody, just know some people have specialties and some people don't. Meaning, there are some people whose brains only think dexterity, only party, only Euro, it's really interesting. And if that's how they think, and you're cool with making that type of game, you'll probably click. But if you don't think like that, you won't even approach the game in the same way to start. So it's almost kind of like you don't even know where to start.
Right. My partner and I, he's a published game designer, and we've got one game. And it was so funny because someone asked if we would speak at an event about co-designing. I said no, because we actually do not design games well together. And like, this will be our last game that we've designed together, and we've lived together for 8 years, but we're not doing this again. You know? So that's an excellent point, well spoken, and that's okay, because it's better that we don't fight.
It's okay. Yeah, find the person you can work with.
Yeah,
they're out there.
So now we have our game, we've come up with the concept, now we have to play test it. And so I'm curious, playtesting is a huge part of it's a necessary part of the design process. You're not gonna design a game in isolation, and it's not gonna be perfect and pitch it to a publisher. It's just not gonna happen. I mean, you could, it'll be bad. I don't
Your
suggest
game's probably broken if you do that.
Don't do that. So I'm curious, how many people have play tested a game before? You've put your prototype in front of people and got feedback. Good, that's good.
It's a big step.
Yeah, it's super important. So the do's and don'ts of playtesting specifically.
Oh, I have a good one.
You got, all right, let's go. We're
So
right into it.
I was, this was at Gen Con, and I was at a party that a publisher was throwing, and it was the type of party where there's like music and alcohol and everybody's having a good time. And this guy came up and is saying, yeah, I've got this game set up over here, do you want to try it? And I was like, well, I will, just like not this moment, I just walked in. And I realized that he really didn't know much about, because he was actually not really wanting to play test as much as he was wanting to pitch, and maybe I'm going a little bit further down the road. But he had this game set up. It was the wrong environment for him to play test this game. He was going about it the wrong way. And so, and the thing was too, is I was explaining to him, I said, listen, here's what you need, if you want advice, designer, about how you should handle this process. And again, this is probably more pitching than playtesting, but that's where it started from. I said, here's what you need to do. And it was funny because he started writing down things that I was saying, and then eventually he kind of just closed his book and was sort of looking at me like, I don't know if he's listening or if I really hammered the point home or if he's just not listening to me anymore. So I'm like, okay, cool, well, good luck, buddy. Because because just one thing I would say, back to the actual question about playtesting, is just get involved in whatever community you live in. There's going to be game designer groups. There's going to be game design nights at different places. I live in the St. Louis, Missouri, in the US, and we have an amazing game design community. If I could move anywhere in the country, in the world to be a game designer, probably be in Germany, but honestly, Toronto, because I don't speak German. But seriously, Toronto is an amazing, amazing, amazing design community with everyone who's here, and people are incredibly helpful and incredibly collaborative. So I would say when it comes to playtesting, find people to playtest with, because your friends and family will only get so into it, and then you burn them out.
Yeah, you really do, and there's a difference really quick between playtesting with, let's say, players and designers. You will get very different feedback, very different results, and again, we are very lucky if you live anywhere near the Toronto area. There are a ton of places to take your games to play. Pam, we're in Proto-TO right now, it's a month away, prototyping event, let alone there's monthly things at 401, Snakes and Lattes, and design, Board Game Bliss. And designers show up because it's kind of a pretty cool, thank you, my math isn't working today. The idea is we share. You play my game, I play your game, and it is absolutely a community. It is weird to say this, but the design community, the design industry is kind of the same few thousand people, and everybody really does get to the point where they know each other. It is a good way to start, though, is become part of your local community, because odds are there are people that'll have a wealth of information for you about what all the next steps will be, and be very honest with you about, do you work with this publisher, don't work with this publisher, that kind of thing. But back to the playtesting idea is, I have two types of playtesting now, one I like, one I don't really like. It's the difference between working on a game for myself and working on an IP, a license. Licensing are very, very limited and very quick. It is really annoying to have to set up things privately to play with people. It is quite a dilemma because you can't play these games publicly. They can't be photographed, they can't be seen, things like that. If it's open, the best thing is you can kind of walk up to anybody and be like, hey, want to play a game? Right? And so anywhere where any type of gaming cafe, any type of gaming place, odds are people are willing to say yes because they like the idea of I get to see something new, I get to see something different. People make games. You'd be amazed how many people that's pretty novel to them. It's I know a person that actually makes games, So there's lots of resources which are great. I'm sure these guys can get into some of the more specifics about playtesting because I've already gone long enough.
Well, I just listened to a whole hour-long panel on playtesting. So I don't know how many of you were also in that panel, but so my big piece of advice is be flexible when you're playtesting. your game is not set in stone. That's why you're playtesting it. So be open to advice that, or like comments from your playtesters. If they say they're frustrated by something or they don't like something, that's fine. Write that down. And then you can go back and figure out, okay, were they just frustrated because they're having a bad day, or are they frustrated because your game is broken? And don't be afraid to stop a playtest in the middle and change something. That took me a really long time to get comfortable with. I thought, I have to play the whole game with this rule set, and now I'm like, okay, well, if it's not working or I can see something is not going to work along the road, I'll change something. Just this morning, playtesting one of my games, and one of the players said, yeah, this card, that number seems like it might be a little wrong, that seems really punishing. And I looked and I was like, yeah, you're right. And I grabbed the card, pulled it out of the sleeve, changed the number, and put it back on the board. And, just that's something really easy, but being that kind of flexible and seeing what works, your playtester's time is really valuable, right? You don't want them to be sitting there for 2 hours slogging through a broken game, because the chances of getting them to play your game again are zero after that. So yeah, treat them well and listen to them even if you're not going to take their advice, and respect their time.
So one of the things I think is really important is to actually choose the right people to play test your games. One of our companies, we make family games, and our biggest play testers are our own children. So we do a lot of stuff at home, but I can't make a game for that company that hasn't had children playing it. And watching interactions between children and adults is really important as well. I had something else I wanted to say and then I forgot.
I'll come back.
It was a good one.
Okay, I can piggyback it. If you're looking to get children audience while she's thinking about this, be prepared just to volunteer at schools. If you're willing to even run like a game design, little club that people get together once every week or 2 weeks or something like that, they can also be your playtest group. Obviously get permissions if you need to photograph anything, because there are, issues around that. But for the most part, schools would be happy to have you come do this sort of thing, because it's great programming and you get what you want out of it too. Go.
Sorry, I figured it out.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that it's really important to ask the right questions. I've been in many playtests where we get through the game and the question from the designer is, did you like it? And that's not really the answer you want. You don't want to hear somebody say that they don't like it or they do like it. You want constructive feedback. So before you even go into your playtest, ask good questions. And a good resource for that is that Fail Faster, the Fail Faster journal, and I believe there's a free PDF online, and you can probably get it through the Kickstarter. But there's a failfaster.ca, there you go.
I was just listening to the panel.
It's way better for you going in knowing what you want to hear from the people who playtest. And the way to do that is to have the right questions prepared.
Yeah. Or even tell them specifically when you sit down, I'm looking at testing this part of the game.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to focus on.
Right. Yeah. If you go to KathleenMercury.com, ding, under the section on playtesting, you can download all my forms. They're for educators, but anybody can use them. And there's a whole bunch that I've gotten from different places that I posted on there too. I ask 4 questions. What works? So it's WINQ, W-I-N-Q. What works? What needs improvement, what new ideas you have, and then whatever questions you want to ask, like what was the most fun moment for players, or asking of the players, if the game is about piracy, did you feel like a pirate? If not, what would make you feel more like a pirate? Because I really want that to have that immersive experience. And actually, the 4 of us work in different types or have worked in education, which I think is kind of fun. And you work in education, but indirectly.
Yes.
Yeah, so like a bunch of educators here. But the one thing I love about playtesting with my students is they don't have like the responsible adult filters that we all have when it comes to things. They don't think about component costs. They don't think about potential publishers. Like, what would be cool? I'm like, please God, that's the moment I want when I've got a 12-year-old going, what would be really awesome? Because chances are it's not going to work. but something might work, you know. And like when my kids design games, I had one kid one year make a game about lice harvesting blood off the scalp. They've made some like bananas things, but the thing is, because they don't have that like limiting factor we put on ourselves sometimes, like playing with kids, any game, you know what I mean? Like you're gonna get different perspectives than adults. So just from a broader sense, play test with as many different types of people as you can. Try to stick with gamers if possible, because non-gamers can get really frustrated and upset because they don't necessarily know how to play the game you're trying to teach them. But yeah, play testing with kids is right. It is.
So yeah, playtesting, so putting your prototype in front of people and getting feedback from them is hugely important. It's a topic we could talk about for hours.
Right.
So definitely look into this more about how to get the most out of your playtesting sessions. And Sten Lim, who just moderated the previous panel, he did a great talk at Prototio a couple years ago. It's up on our YouTube channel about how to get the best kind of feedback, how to get the most out of your feedback sessions. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. I highly recommend it. Requested viewing for all of our designers who attend Prototio. So we have our idea, we've play tested it, we feel like it's definitely ready to pitch now. So now there's two avenues you could go down. You can go down pitching to publishers to try to have it made, or you can try to do the Kickstarter or crowdfunding route to publish it yourself, do the self-publishing route. So how many people here are interested in pitching their games to publishers? Okay, interesting. How many are interested in self-publishing their games? Okay, interesting.
Good.
So is pitching an interesting topic for you to learn?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Well, because you're gonna have to like basically pitch your game to like people for Kickstarter essentially.
Yeah. Okay,
It's still
cool.
a process.
Okay, so I originally started thinking that I was going to go the self-publishing route. Probably because I like to have control. I like to have control over every single aspect of the whole thing. When I started looking, no, right? No. My co-host is like, no. But then I started looking into it, doing research, and reading a book about crowdfunding by Jamie Stegmaier, who's a great designer, has a great blog about Kickstarter. I highly recommend reading that. And he really talked about how much work goes into that and building up community, and how it is a huge thing. It's not just something you can just do on the side. It takes a lot of time and effort to do it. After looking into it, reading more about it, I was like, this is not quite for me. So I pitched to publishers. And the main way that I do that, I don't fly to a lot of conventions. The main way you probably do it is going to Gen Con, going to Origins, going to these larger conventions, which a lot of my panelists do. But it's quite expensive, I can't quite do those things. So one of the main ways that I've gotten in with publishers to pitch my games is to make connections with my local designers, make meaningful connections and friendships, and then just ask for an introduction through them to pitch to publishers that they know. That's how I made a lot of connections with my current games with publishers right now. So get involved with the community, make those meaningful connections, and just ask for an introduction. And once you're there, you can send them your rules, your sell sheet, which is a one-pager going through your game, and also ideally a video that shows a quick run-through of how the game plays.
I have, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I have a very funny story about your friends who are also in the game industry helping make introductions. While I was at Origins this year, I was working with Helaina at the KTBG booth, and Sean, one of Helena's employees, was also there, and he played one of my games, and I just had made this game, was just starting to play test it, and he played it. He's like, this is so good. You know who would like this game? Blue Orange. They would really like this game. And I was like, oh, cool. I don't know anyone there. That's all right. I'm not planning to pitch this convention. And the whole weekend, so he's just like, yeah, so you should pitch this to Blue Orange. I'm like, oh, it's all right. And then right at the end of the con, the last half hour, he comes up to me, he grabs my arm, he's like, Shannon, do you have your game with you, that dice game? And I was like, yeah. He goes, come with me. And he drags me to the Blue Orange booth and goes and introduces me to their marketing manager and just like, this is Shannon, she has a game to pitch you. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I do.
Well,
And that's how I ended up doing my one pitch at Origins.
So I would say, as a bull in a china shop kind of person, that I was really nervous when I was first getting started about going up to publishers or asking for pitches and stuff like that. Let me tell you that you can, before publishers' time, they, like, first of all, to pitch, do your research. Don't try to sell indie boards and cards a 2-4 hour war game. They don't do that. They don't make those games. If you do that, you try to sell that, you're wasting all their time, and it doesn't bode well. Do your research, know the types of publishers that would publish your game. Then email them in advance of the convention and say, I'd like to set up a meeting with you. They'll give you half an hour, they'll give you an hour. You know, they may ask for more information, they may screen, you know, you might be screened with like a Google form or something like that, because they just, again, want to make sure it's the right fit so that it's a good use of their time too. Don't be afraid to do it, because I had a game that I started working on at the beginning of the summer, and by the time Gen Con came around, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing's ready to go. Like, I can pitch this thing. And so I only had a couple little appointments made up, but my day filled by the end of the day, just from talking to people. I'm like, hey, I've got a game if you're interested. I had a couple pictures on my phone. I'd show them to like, yeah, I want to see that. We figure out a time and we do that. Talk to people. It's definitely a business of relationships. It's definitely something where you, like, the more people you know, just and work in people's booths. There's all kinds of ways we can talk about that too. But the thing is at the end of the day, don't be shy to say, can I set up an appointment with a time for you to meet your game? Because the worst they're gonna do is say no, and the best they're gonna do is say yeah. And every time you play test, you'll get something from the experience, both in terms of how you pitch, all the way to like feedback on your game, and sometimes they even say yes. So don't feel like, because I was so nervous about it. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm just bull in china shop. You go get it, girl. You go get it.
There is a networking panel. I think it moved to 6, but if that's something you guys are interested in, I'd definitely go into that. Because a big part of it we'll end up talking about is it does matter getting to know people. Networking is a huge part of it, getting introductions from other people. You can go about doing yourself, but you're going to spend a lot more time than you really need to. If you can get to cons and you don't know anybody, approaching the publisher like right up and saying like, I've got a game, if you've got any time, can I talk to you? You're probably going to get like a 50-50 shot with every publisher. If they're not full, they're probably going to say yes if they're interested. I really recommend you don't show up with one game. If you're trying to get publishers to know you, you want them to say yes to you next convention season, not go through all of the re-meeting, that kind of thing. Have a few games prepared. You also don't know what they're going to say in a pitch. So, for example, you might be sitting there and they're like, oh, by the way, we make card games now. That's where we're going next. You're like, well, I have a card game. And so when they start getting used to the fact that it's like, maybe they don't say yes to anything. You've never published with them before. But they're so used to the fact that you have variety, or they can see what your skill set is. You'd be amazed what that can kind of keep rolling into later. So even now, I'm starting to get approached more for like contracted to make games. But that came because I spent a few years being like, well, here's literally a suitcase of games that I'm toting around. This is what I've got that's more of your category. Oh, well, now you're happy enough to see what I've got that it's not hard to make the meetings anymore, because they want to see what the next thing is. Again, even if they don't want it, they want to see what you're capable of, and if they trust that, they want to see you more. And then that can keep building onto more and more relationships. So that's a big part of it, is sort of proving yourself as you go, but keeping it going.
And it's also okay to just make games for your family and friends to enjoy.
Yeah, this is assuming you want to sell them. This is assuming you're going to sell it.
That's a good point. You are humans.
Yes, you don't have to make a game for anyone but yourself.
So, Helaina, are there any do's and don'ts as from the
This is
publishers?
like,
here we go.
Yeah.
This should be
Can you
like
take
settle in, everyone.
So I've never actually pitched to anyone, but I get a lot of pitches. The 2 games that we've made, we self-published, and we went to Kickstarter with them. So I don't know what it's like to actually put myself out there as a designer and wait for someone to say, yes, I'm interested. I just made it myself. But speaking as a publisher, the first thing I think that's really important, if you have never approached a publisher before, is just to say, hey, I know a lot about your company. Here are the things I know, and I think that my game fits really well into your line of games. It's really important to approach a publisher that way. That makes me know right away that they've done a little bit of homework and that their game could possibly fit in my line of games. Because I can't tell you how many sell sheets and videos people have sent to me, and I'm just like,
You're like, this is wildly inappropriate.
definitely do not understand what we do. Kids table board gaming doesn't make war games.
But it's cool when kids fight though.
Although we do have a game called Food Fighters, but anyway, so it's important to approach the publisher knowing what they do and telling them that you know what they do. It's also really important to have a clear and concise sell sheet showing maybe some visuals from the game, what the statistics are, like how long it takes you, what the ages are for gameplay, and how many players, and then also a few points about how you play the game and how to win. Too much information on a sell sheet makes me not want to read it, although I do anyways, but makes me not want to spend any time on it. And then if you can either talk through your game in a video or actually send some part of the game being played with multiple people, that's really good. Some of my favorite videos actually have people sitting around a table and playing and listening to their banter throughout the game. That's really nice because you can see how focused they are actually on the game. Sometimes I know it's pretend, but that's okay. That's okay. So just that first initial contacting the publisher and saying, here's a game that's for sure for you. Here's how to play it. And then, like these guys said, when you do meet with them, have more than one thing with you. Because, sometimes I'll say yes to taking your pitch because I kind of like the way the game looks and it turns out it's maybe not for us, then you'll have something else to show me. And the other thing is, if a publisher says to you, this game isn't for us, but we really, really liked it, say to them, do you have any friends you think would like this game? Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to say that, because I can't tell you how many times I've sent designers to other companies and they're interested in the game because I know what they're looking for. So that's an important thing. Just put yourself out there for that as well.
We did another infographic. If you guys are interested in this one on Meeple Syrup as well. It's there's actually it's a pitching checklist, which covers a lot of the stuff we were just talking about. So if you ever want a quick overview, it's in one really easy to read document. So you're welcome to check that out.
Yeah. Did you want to touch on self-publishing versus?
You want me to?
Well, I mean, just since we're about the experience. Well, I mean, if there's a few quick little hot moments or things to keep in mind about self-publishing or lessons.
Okay. Isn't there a crowdfunding? There's a panel.
Yeah, but since a couple people asked about it. So
yeah.
A couple quick little things.
Yeah. So, firstly, Kickstarter is hell. The first time Kickstarter is really, really, really hard on you because of the time that it takes and emotionally, and it's completely draining, but it's also incredibly fulfilling. So when you see that you've made this game and 1,000 people are interested in playing it, that they give you their money a year in advance of getting the game, it's very, very exciting. When you're crowdfunding, you need to be prepared. You have to do a lot of research before you go that route. Crowdfunding has changed in the last 5 years in a way that I never would have dreamed. You have to have a very blingy campaign these days. It used to be you could have pieces of paper and make a prototype and film yourself and your friends playing it and then bring it to the world. So that's the way Kickstarter started, and it really should still be that way, but it's not. But there are so many different aspects that you need to be prepared with. It was really hard at the beginning. I cannot believe that we've gotten to where we've gotten to. Eight games in. I could have very easily given up after the first one. So if you are passionate about making your game and you feel like you have something because people play it and they do engage in it deeply, and you know what you want want to do with it, like where you want it to be in the future. Like it could be you just want to have a Kickstarter campaign and have 100 people get your game and get it made. You can go that route. If you think that you're going to make a game and make $1 million on Kickstarter, it doesn't often happen, but it does happen. You need to be prepared with that level of Kickstarter. Do your research, learn about how people go about doing that.
And you have to build an audience. You can't assume it's going to be there for you. So if you don't think you have the time or effort to do that, you might want to look at something more like maybe Game Crafter. They sell a lot of games through them too. If you're happy to say like, yeah, I'd like 100 people to get my game or something like that, you might want to consider that more, because as Helaina said, getting into Kickstarter before you get there, you have to do a lot of work to get there, and a huge part of it is now marketing. And so if you don't have those skills or know someone who can help you out with them, it might be something to think about.
There are like a couple of freelancers who do that kind of thing, so it might be worth like looking into that if you have
if that's where you
cash
want to
pay
go.
somebody. Yeah.
Because you have to bring the audience with you.
Yeah.
Freelancers who manufacture?
No, freelancers who will reach out and like garner an audience.
Oh, like,
yeah.
Like a
If
Kickstarter.
you're
Like
a
Anna
so
Jackson
Cassie
Phillips
Freeman
does it.
has
Oh,
been doing
okay.
that.
Yeah.
So just the comment saying that if you maybe don't have time or effort to devote to Kickstarter, there might be someone you can hire to do that. And that's a really good point, that you can't do everything. You know, sometimes it's good to outsource things, for sure. So we only have a few minutes left, so I just want to open up to more questions or comments if anyone has something for the panel.
Nicole!
I wanted to wait, to be fair. Just on the Kickstarter thing, you don't have to go big for your first Kickstarter either. There's been a recent like spate of stuff go up on Kickstarter, and it's kind of gone under the hashtag Break Kickstarter.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's all like really tiny projects where people have put together like Travis Hill, who is a game designer. He threw together this thing called Chainmail, and it's basically chainmail fiction in certain genres. And that was his project. And you could put together an 18-card game, like a button shy game, and put that on Kickstarter. Just to have that be your dry run, maybe.
Yes, do something small.
And get used to what Kickstarter is like and what you have to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do that now, where they'll do, if they have a big game planned, they don't start with the big game. They start with something really small, use that as something like kind of like cut your teeth on, figure out all the mistakes, keep it really cheap. You do not want to all of a sudden have all this expense that you've never figured out. You've never figured out postage and shipping and all that fun stuff before. Do it on something super easy to move. Then do your giant box game where you've now built the audience. You've proved you can fulfill all of these things, because there's a lot of trust issues with Kickstarter right now that you have to be aware of. And just pay a bit of attention to that too.
Okay, we just have, go ahead.
So what if you have something, you're like, hey, I want to bring it to a publisher, and you pitch it to the publisher, and you're afraid that, okay, I pitched it to the publisher, they weren't interested, but then 6 months down the line, there's a Kickstarter for that exact mechanic or something that you know.
So
Does
if
this
it's
happen?
like, for the most part, okay, normally that's like parallel designing. So if you see something 6 months down the line on Kickstarter, I promise you that was in production like at least a year, if not 2 years prior to that, because it's 6 months just to print.
Okay.
So you can be worried about that. We find that with a lot of people who first get in, they're like, well, do I need to get a lawyer? Do I need to have people sign things before I see it? Again, this is such a small community that if it gets out that a publisher or a designer is acting a certain way, everybody finds out very quickly, and they will not work with you.
Right.
Keep a design diary.
Right.
You can do that too.
Yeah.
Keep records, but
Right.
It's
parallel
like I'm
designs.
working on this thing
Yeah.
on this date.
Yeah.
Everyone in the industry, their whole business is based on ideas. There's a lot of respect for other people's ideas. And so if there are moments where, like we said, something happens and people publicize it and they've got receipts to prove it, basically, it does not bode well for the designer. So generally, and people who got into this business love games, and they love the ideas behind games, and they respect your work. So I wouldn't worry about that. Could it happen? Yeah. And if you live in fear of that, you won't do anything. So you might as well just make cool stuff, and even if something terrible happens, you made something cool, girl.
Yeah. Just know that sometimes might be a chance that something comes up and you might just have to get rid of a game. Like, you can sit down with a publisher. Most publishers are very honest. They'll say, stop, I have to tell you right now, we have a game in production, we have a game we just purchased, we have a game coming out, whatever it is, that does this. And so you either have to decide, okay, am I going to keep pitching this game, or I'm going to say this game is dead until I rework it, because you don't want to be yet another of something, right? And so most people are very, very honest about this.
So we have to wrap up real quick. So we're just gonna finish on a positive note. Very quick, one quick do from all of us. Do all the way down.
Make games.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So mine is get it to the table as soon as possible. Done is better than perfect.
Right. Find community like Board Game Broads. Ding. Kathleen Mercury at Mercury 7M's Mercury on Twitter.
Make sure you're having fun, because that is the whole point of this. So we can get wrapped up very quickly in just being bogged down by all the details, all the craziness. Remember, you're still making a game.
Right. We make toys.
If you're not having fun, then what's the point?
Make friends. Like, gamers are amazing. Everyone in the industry that I've met so many amazing people. So just make friends and have fun, hang out. Don't just play your prototypes. Play published games too.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Help other designers.
Yeah. Yes. It really is a community. The best thing to take away from this is gaming is a community. Do your best to be part of the community, contribute to the community, and it will always pay you back. It really will.
Yes. Make sure you give as much as you take.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks to this amazing panel.